Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about EPMs or technical program manager roles and how they are sometimes understood in terms of the actual skills and profile that's required to pass technical program manager interviews. And I use this title that says kind of like you didn't fail because you're not technical enough to kind of underline sometimes how the roles are misinterpreted in terms of expectations and how you can, depending on the background that you have, reframe your experience to much better align with what hiring managers and interviewers are looking for when hiring for technical program manager roles. So I want to touch on a few aspects today. So, for example, here you have a sample profile, a very strong candidate. They had 6 years in operations and strategy consulting as a background. They had exposure to cross-functional programs. They've gone through their stakeholder management chops. They have orchestrated multiple teams and delivered across multiple teams. And then they get into interviews and they purely describe what they did in terms of business language and business context, which is, yes, important, but it's not the only aspect and not the only sphere that you want to sort of highlight and have shine and really surface from your background, because you've likely have operational chops, you've had some sort of exposure to AI workflows, not even if it's not AI workflows, just like simple software tool implementations. It's more than likely that this candidate already had singing technical work. They just didn't frame it in the right way. And so as a result, you kind of end up sounding like a pure business analyst and not somebody that would make a good fit for a technical program manager type of position. So what I see and what I want to try to convey with some of these roles and videos is that I don't think the gap is necessarily always pure technical experience, because I think a lot of operations professionals with those 5 to 8 years of experience are already doing most of the satisfying profiles expectations in terms of stakeholder coordination, cross-functional delivery, driving programs to the end. But I think the remaining and what's missing is a reframing of the technical program manager role and how that already aligns with that 80% of your experience in terms of vocabulary, using the right frameworks, knowing what the job entails, knowing what deliverables or artifacts signal value to engineering teams and signal technical credibility to both engineering teams, but also technical teams that are looking for that good middle ground of technical depth and business level savviness. That says, yes, this person can operate here, they get the business, but they also get enough of the technical part, and they've already seen enough of the technical work in their past life to convince us that they can be a successful technical program manager. So let's break down, because this is I think it's almost like a running joke in the technical program manager world, what technical enough actually means. And I don't think there's ever going to be an end to this debate, because this technical keyword is heavily dependent on the expectations and the context, meaning the company that you work for, the team that you work for, the business unit organization that you work for would have a different level of expectations and understanding to attach to the technical keyword and how technical you should be as a technical program manager. But in general, technical credibility, I don't think has a lot to do with writing code all day, because you're not going to be expected to do so when working as a technical program manager. At least you're not going to be expected to write code as your primary job responsibility, because otherwise you should be hired as an engineer if that's what you want to do. But I think what it should mean when reframing the technical keyword is, one, do you have, what vocabulary do you use talking about a program? Like, does the vocabulary and the language that you use demonstrate that you had that technical depth, that you have gone through technical training, technical courses, or perhaps a technical role in their past life that now enables you to
signal, and not only just signal in the virtue signaling sort of way, but actually prove and sort of certify that you have what I mean, you have enough technical skills, enough of a technical skill set to be dangerous and contribute to technical conversations with engineering teams. Another element is, of course, are you levered aware of the right artifacts, such as a program charter for a technical program, a technical risk register that pinpoints to engineering work going on, stakeholder mappings or DAISY tables that include the business stakeholders as much as they do the technical and engineering team stakeholders, and demonstrate an understanding of what each person does and is responsible for on a program that combines a software technology delivery aspect to it, as well as translating and continually reasoning around the trade-offs that engineers go through when setting up a system architecture or an architecture diagram, and just ensuring that you can frame or pose decisions, one, in a way that engineers recognize, but also in a way that the business recognize, and also constantly translating the two worlds in a way that they speak to each other, and kind of being that glue person across those two worlds, bridging the gap. So I think what TPM interviewers are actually usually testing and looking for and fishing for in an interview are three main things. One, can you scope and understand the scope, of course, of a technical program? Do you have enough of a technical chops to understand like the boundaries, the dependencies, the software components that are involved, the systems that are involved, etc. And also, can you navigate stakeholders, both technical and engineering stakeholders and business stakeholders, through that scope, and keep everybody aligned in terms of the priorities that are going on within that program, but also how that program may itself be a priority against other things that are going on in your organization. And then also, can you take your own risk? Meaning, do you understand what risk factors or risk sources, and even looking ahead in time, like, can you proactively identify risk as it comes through? And the risk is going to be inherently tied to the software or the technical domain that you're exposed to. And I think that these are ultimately learnable. They're not something that you are born with. They're just something that you're exposed to in time. And then with curiosity, sheer training, sheer learning, and hands time on the job, you can pick up. So most general program manager or project management courses, they don't do a good enough job at like developing these technical depth. They do a great job. Now, I've done the PMP, for example, giving you the academic lay of the land in terms of what good program and project management looks like in practice. So they give you the methodology in a sense. But as far as the technical enough side, you will have most likely already developed that through on-the-job operational and technical exposure. So the PMP doesn't give you the artifacts, doesn't give you the understanding of the language that engineering use, and again, how to do this reframing versus the engineering world. So it's that context that I think it's missing in terms of closing the gap from I can only be a business program manager to I can also become technically savvy to be dangerous in the technical program manager role. So I think in a way for most people, and again, I want to preempt this, like this is very much applicable for operational people or people that work in operations in tech, or people that, have worked in project manager backgrounds with some sort of exposure to software tools and software projects. The transition and the message that I want to leave you with is that the transition to technical program manager or TPM jobs is like actually closer than you think. I think it's all about reframing your existing work into the vocabulary that companies and the technical understanding, the actual technical work that company sort of expects, and also building and showcasing artifacts that prove that you can do the job, as well as practicing it at your current company or in preparation for your next TPM role. And I was honestly there, like I was working in operations.
sales operations to be exact. I was working in strategy consulting, and I did not come from a software engineering background. Yet I'm working as a technical program manager. And I think this is a technical gap that's highly achievable with the right background, but most of all, background is not fixed. So with the right curiosity to learn and curiosity to expose yourself to technical concepts, investigate, just be curious to learn what those are, and skilling up and training and just having fun and fun while learning these things, I think is more than enough to close the gaps if you already have had exposure to operational backgrounds. So I hope I was able to convey to you that I don't think technical program manager jobs are necessarily only made for software engineers. I think the gap is there to close. And if you want, and if you're free, I'm going to be talking more about how you can get ready to close this gap. On March 11th, I'm going to do a webinar on Maven, and I'm just going to more talk about how you can actually prep yourself to close this gap even more.